So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have our agenda and now the minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Find anything there? All in favor?
Aye.
We have approved our minutes. Now we have public participation. Anyone in Cyberland from the public want to speak? Anyone here want to speak? And I don't have to read the paragraph. Discussion and next steps. And I'm going to start this one by saying that I visited the high school this morning, had a delightful hour walking through a very quiet, very well-organized building. I mean, there were kids in it, no question about that, but you're supposed to be. And I've got a chance to step into a couple of classes, one of which was beginning the debate about imperialism in America, starting with Hawaii and the Spanish-American War and so on. That was interesting. And and I saw, and Mr. Scott, maybe you could talk more about this, and I will. A very enthusiastic presentation from a tech teacher who just showed me everything that was going on in her room, and it was fantastic. But,
Yes, Ms.
Anyway.
Laura was very, very excited to have you come visit today.
I was happy that we went down there and I had a chance to hear and see that. Very good, but I won't say much more because the next item on the agenda is the grades 9 through 12 update. So, Mr. Scott, if you would start by introducing your group.
Sure, absolutely. So starting in the end, we have Leah McGuire, Assistant Principal Tracy Kane, Director of Intervention in Academics, Secondary, Amanda Torres, Assistant Principal, Andrew Marchand, Assistant Principal, Mary DeMarchi, English Department Chair, and Aaron Sullivan, English teacher. They will also be talking to you a little bit about some new courses after we go through this presentation. Josh, you ready? Perfect. All right. Good. Just wanted to highlight, as you guys all saw when you drove in, our new building is coming along quite well. Some more of the steel has gone up in the past week. The middle school is starting to take some shape. You can begin to see where the auditorium will be, the cafeterias. So they're coming along pretty quick out there. And just the vision statement and our school motto: what you do, do well. That's our school motto. Quick overview of the things we'll go through tonight, which is demographics, testing data, student support, staff supports, additional student data, and then what our plans are moving forward. Okay, so this is really one of the ones we wanted to highlight the most, which is about the changing demographics and changing population of Torrington High School. As you can see, in 2020, 2021, the high school enrollment was 888. We now sit at an enrollment of 1,007. It's actually 1,009. We registered 2 more kids today. Seems a little late in the year to register for school, but heck, why not, right? So our population has increased quite dramatically, which has been a really great thing. I think a lot of families are really excited about the new school. A lot of families are really excited about the new things that are happening at our school. So it has been nice to see our population really surge when I talk to principals in other districts, and they're still battling the same problem they were 3 years ago, which is that dwindling student enrollment and trying to keep kids in the public school system. One of the other things we just wanted to, or 2 of the other things we just wanted to highlight were some of the changes in our demographics. As you can see, from 2020, 2021, we had 74 EL students. We now have 108 EL students, which is quite a dramatic increase in our English learner population. And then another highlight is the number of students with IEPs. We've seen a decrease, and I think that's due to more accurate assessment of where our students are at. 2020, 2021, 156, currently sit at 144. When you take into consideration how much the school has grown during that time period, I think that's a pretty impressive recalibration to a more appropriate number for our students. Okay. For the 108 EL students, just a little bit of more information on the side there. 18 students moved into Torrington High School from another country this year and 24 last year. And there are now 26 languages listed as home languages for Torrington High School, which makes phone calls home really, really interesting. A couple of other things to keep in mind as we go through the presentation. You know, this is our first normal school year in a very long time. So we're very excited about some of the things we've been able to either bring back or get structured to bring back next year. So those are some things we really want to highlight as we go through this presentation. But also, of course, we keep in mind that our students perhaps didn't have the traditional schooling over the last 3 years, which would have contributed to their growth, which we're working to try to support as much as possible. Just some pictures highlighting some of the activities here at Torrington High School. I'll hand it off to Tracy.
So this slide shows the percentage of students meeting proficiency on STAR, and it shows both the trend from last year's 9th graders, for example, to this year's 9th graders, as well as changes in the rough cohort. So last year's 9th graders to this year's 10th graders. So that would be the color, right? So if you look at this, if you look at the 10th grade reading on the left-hand side of the slide, in spring 2022, 36% of students demonstrated proficiency. This year, different group of 10th graders, 40% of students demonstrated proficiency. If you go diagonally, this year's 10th graders back to what they were in 9th grade, there was a +6% change in the percentage of students reaching proficiency. So some highlights on the slide are our 10th graders in reading, whether you look at it, you know, trend from last year's 10th graders to this year's 10th graders, or you look at this year's 10th graders compared to how they did last year, we see an increase in the percentage of students reaching proficiency. And then over on the right-hand side of the slide, looking at math, again, the 9th and 10th grade, we see a big change in the percentage of students reaching proficiency. So that's our proficiency results. If we go to the next slide, let's take a look at our growth. It shows the percentage of students in each grade level making typical growth on STAR from fall to spring this year. And all grade levels had more than 50% of students making typical growth for both reading and math.
Okay.
This is me.
Yeah.
SATs. So this, yep, that's the one. Thank you. So it's the PSATs. The PSAT, the grade 9 takes a PSAT, 8-9, grade 10 takes a PSAT, takes 2 different tests actually. Take the NMSQT in the fall, the PSAT 10 in the spring. All this is based on spring testing scores. Okay. So the 9th grade is based on the 8-9, 10th is based on the PSAT 10, and the 11th grade is based on the SAT. So what we're looking at here is a cohort, matched cohort, so that the growth from one year to the next is actually a matched cohort. Look at about 100, and the matched cohort there is about 120-ish kids. This is just a matched cohort group moving over. So same group of 9th graders moved over. That benchmark, 10th grader, that benchmark moved up a little bit. And 11th graders in that benchmark as well. If you go over to mathematics, all of the matching cohorts actually moved up in score except for the 11th grade. They did not meet benchmark. They were not off by much, but they did not meet the benchmark in mathematics. We have put a lot of things in place to counteract that as well, which I've started this year, but we will not see that until next year. Hopefully next year, possibly actually when they're juniors, really, so possibly 2 years. We started changing the weight algebra is really split up here. So we can go to the next one. Thank you. So this is the growth slide. This one will show this one's the mean score for the 10th grade is 450. that went down just a little bit, 10 points there, but we did meet the benchmark. Grade 10, 11, as you can see for the SAT, went up a good amount, 30 points there. We did meet the benchmark, and in grade 12, we met the benchmark as well, 470 to 490. So that's the national part as well. You can go to the next one there, Jeff. And in mathematics, these are we're split up here. So this is the match cohort from 430, 420 to 430, and you can see them right there. It's kind of the same idea, just a little bit more drawn out. Same tests, same season. So grade 11 was 420 to 440, and grade 12 was 440 to 460. So you can actually see growth in all the cohorts areas, even though we did not meet the benchmark for that area. On to early credit opportunities. So these are the courses that we offer at the high school. So for ECE UConn students, we have 186 students taking a potential 967 college credits, which is outstanding. Now we have gone towards the way of UConn. We have some UConn and AP courses, and then we just have some AP courses. Students taking AP courses are 86 students taking AP tests, actually. 86 different students are taking AP tests for 116 tests total. You're going to see a decline in this a little bit of the students taking the tests, but that's because we have more students taking UConn courses instead of the AP. We can't really, it's hard, you can't teach the AP and the UConn together. So they all have the opportunity to take the AP test, which we do push them to take it because it doesn't hurt it. If you do well on it, fantastic. But we don't label it as an AP course anymore because really it's not teaching the AP curriculum. It's teaching it has to teach the UConn curriculum to stay with the UConn course. So it's not exactly going to the test. We don't want the kids to think they're fully ready for that test by taking that course. So they can still take the test.
So College Board and ECE kind of went different directions a few years back. ECE really focuses on giving students an opportunity to earn credit before they get to college, whereas AP really does consider itself as a way for students to demonstrate that they are prepared for college and increase their competitiveness for select colleges. So they do serve two different purposes. That's why a few years back, it used to be very easy to have UConn or ECE courses be matched up with an AP course. But since they've started going in different directions, they really don't match up anymore. So we had to really make a decision of either teaching a course like UConn Bio or having AP Bio. We really couldn't run them within the same class anymore.
So this next slide has information about our interventions. On the left-hand side of the slide are the different interventions and the number of students served. So we've got our ARC, which is our Academic Resource Center. That's where students are placed based on a teacher, counselor, administrator recommendation, and they receive content support in that setting. SST stands for our Student Success Team, and that's a team that meets daily during period 4. We have an SST coordinator, and the appropriate adults are brought in to talk about matching supports to student needs. This year, we brought students into the process, which I think is really important for high school kids to kind of own where they are and own, the strategies that we're going to use to help them, get on track and be successful. We have our extended day program, which meets every Tuesday and Thursday after school. It's really cool coming by. It's a hub of learning and activity. It's been really successful. And a lot of kids are taking advantage of that. And that could be something that a student is sort of scheduled into and they're assigned to a teacher, or students can access the extended day program as on a drop-in basis. We're working on planning summer school as we speak, so our numbers for that are to be determined. Our interventions at the secondary level are different than the elementary level. We run them as semester courses. So we have 2 here at the high school, concepts in math and strategic reading, and you can see the participation numbers. At the SIC meeting for the elementary schools, there was a question about how can we show the impact of intervention on our student learning, and it's difficult at the elementary level because they're not scheduled into Power School as a class, and so therefore you can't access the data for those groups as a class. But at the secondary level, because they're scheduled into intervention as a class, we can actually access data around those groups of students. When we think about our students in intervention, we really want them to be making ambitious growth, not just typical growth. So we took a look at the percentage of students making ambitious growth on STAR for all students, and then our intervention students. And if you see on the slide there, you can see for reading, there's a 12.1% differential between our intervention students making ambitious growth versus all students, and a 6% differential for math. Of course, we want all of our intervention students making ambitious growth. You know, sometimes there are things beyond the teacher's control, like a student's attendance, but we are working towards improving how we're approaching intervention, reading interventions. Interventionists at the secondary level participated in a professional learning experience this year. It was a 12-hour asynchronous experience on improving reading for older students. So we're evolving our instructional delivery model there. And with math, we didn't have a core, we haven't had a core resource to support math intervention at the high school. So we did some work exploring that, and we will have one next year. So, you know, hopefully next year this time, we'll see even more students in intervention making ambitious growth.
Couple of highlights of some of the awards we received this year. I think everybody remembers Wayne being nominated for a Grammy Award, also receiving the National High School Music Teachers Connecticut State Teacher of the Year Award. I think I got the name of that right. Our guidance folks receiving the FAFSA award, and then just some other celebratory pictures of our staff there.
Okay, so this slide is about coaching at the high school, and like the elementary schools, we have 2 instructional coaches at the high school, one for STEM and one for humanities. Of course, these 2 coaches are supporting a much bigger staff of 100 teachers. So with only 2 coaches for a staff of 100 teachers, it's not possible for them to work with every teacher in the building. We focus on cultivating a coaching culture where teachers want to work with a coach and grow their practice through that individualized professional learning. So participation in coaching cycles is voluntary, and teachers drive the goals of coaching cycles. Coaching cycles are student-centered, so we're looking to impact student learning, and they're data-driven. So we're strategically designing these coaching cycles so that we're assessing student learning as a result of the coaching cycle. So if you look on the slide, you see the participation or the number of coaching cycles for STEM and humanities, and then you've got in the aggregate there the student growth. So on the STEM side, 90% of students in each coaching cycle demonstrated at least 80% growth by increasing one level on pre and post data. So these are teacher-created assessments that are used in the coaching cycle. And then on the humanities side, it's 100%. Coaches do work with 100% of staff in a variety of ways, providing professional learning during faculty meetings and PD days. They produce a monthly coaching newsletter, which emphasizes strategies that faculty are working on. And they've also facilitated and led classroom lab, which Brian will talk about later. But it's bringing teachers together, it's teacher-centered professional learning, and the focus has been on rigor and relevance. They've done 2 cycles so far. There'll be a third one before the end of the year is up. If you go to the next slide on coaching, this zeroes in on 2 specific coaching cycles. One for English, one for science. You can see the standards-based goals there. And then you can see the pre-cycle data, sort of where students were before the coaching cycle and then after the coaching cycle. So you can see all students are making growth as a result of the coaching cycles.
You have a question from the audience?
Yeah, so I'm not really understanding what a coaching cycle is.
Sure. So, a coach will meet with a teacher and they'll work together to establish a learning goal. So if you look at the examples on that slide, the skill on the English side is working on providing an objective summary of text, right? So being able to summarize text is a reading standard. The coach and the teacher will work together to assess where kids are relative to that skill. And, assess to what degree can students summarize a text, a really important skill. So if you look at the pre-cycle data, emerging would be the lowest performance and exceeding would be the best. So before the coaching cycle, 92% of students were at emerging, and then you had 8% at meeting. But by the end, you had 77% of students meeting or exceeding the expectation on being able to provide an objective summary of a text.
So is this all the students? Because I thought you said.
Nope.
No, this would be,
Yep, we can
Yep.
clarify.
Confusing.
Yes. Sorry. You wanna go?
Sure. So just for some more clarity, so the coach will, if you go to the coach and say, I'd like to do a coaching cycle, it is in an 8-week rotation. You meet with them prior to them coming into your classroom. And so that they can meet with as many teachers as possible, they'll visit one of your classes. So you might be doing the same curriculum in multiple classes, but they're going to meet with one of your classes because they're trying to get into as many classes a day as they can. So the sample is lower because it's one class, but what you're learning from the coach in that coaching cycle will apply across your classes. You establish what it is you would like to focus on, what elements of your pedagogy you really want to focus on, and what student success you want to see. The coach will work with you to establish new strategies, new classroom management approaches, skills, help you research new ways to address the standard within your class, and is also there to take objective data. So I know in one recent coaching cycle, actually in science, the STEM coach was able to actually take the types of questions for accountable talk that teachers asked and label where on that list most of the questions were directed, which allows you as a teacher to say, oh, you know what, I'm really asking, the questions I'm asking, I think I'm hitting this higher level, but I'm really, they're more here and I need to revisit that. And you continue throughout the 8-week cycle, you debrief with the coach to review how the process is going.
So generally, there's a pre-test and a post-test prior to the cycle and then post-cycle. So you can see any kind of added improvement, and then the teacher will extrapolate what they've learned to the other classes as well, so in order to help them. So that those results should be throughout the classes.
So how many classes? So every 8 weeks, is it one
It's
teacher
probably-
and that teacher then talks to the other teacher?
Well, there are 8 periods in a day, so they can probably focus on, I don't know, what are they, 5, maybe?
They generally carry about 4 coaching cycles at a time. So if you go back to the previous slide, it has the number of coaching cycles they've done.
Josh?
So,
Nope.
so 18 and 17.
So to what you're saying, they can only meet with so many teachers at a given time, and we never, but we do share out at faculty or at department meetings what has been going on in the coaching cycle so that the rest of the department can benefit from each one.
But Aaron, if I could just
Yeah.
to clear it up a little bit, So let's just say you teach 5 sections of the same class, for example.
Yeah.
You're going through a coaching cycle. You're meeting with that coach for one class, 3-4 days a week, or every day a week for 8 weeks. You're applying what you're learning during that block of time with one class to all your other classes.
Right, absolutely.
So if you see 125 kids, right?
Yeah.
They're
But you
all
get the benefit.
benefiting, right, from that same experience.
So they may spend period 1 with me and period 2 with Aaron and then period 3 with somebody else.
With
So-
a history teacher.
Yeah, so they hit as many as they can.
Thank you.
Go ahead, quick.
So that data that you presented, is that just, so if a teacher has 7 sections and they get a coach for one of those sections and they apply it to all, the data you presented, is that the one section that the coach was in? Or is that an accumulation of all 7 sections that a teacher might actually?
This data is the data from the coaching, the classes that the teachers,
The
the
coach.
coach is working with, yes. I mean, that's a good question. My guess is that it would look similar if
That's-
the,
yeah, just-
the strategy, the approach is being applied across the classes.
It would just show that success rate of the
Yeah.
coaching cycle against the rest of the teacher's day.
Right, but it would be a lot of data for the coaches to keep track of and collect. So, the expectation is that they collect data for the classrooms that they're in.
Thank you.
All right, we have taken on some additional initiatives. It's long been a belief of mine, and I think many of my team share that belief, that the best professional learning comes from our fellow teachers. So one of the things that we've really tried to emphasize this year is using our own internal expertise to help people grow. One of the items that Tracy mentioned a little while ago is Classroom Lab. Classroom Lab, which is led by our coaches, is a collection of teachers who come together, talk about best practices, and then get into each other's classrooms in order to give each other feedback around very specific goals in order to improve instruction in each other's classrooms. So it's teachers working together to improve teaching. We also started up new teacher workshop this year. So we meet with the new teachers once a month, bring them all together. We have all of the first year and all of the second year teachers in our new teacher workshop. Each month, we bring in a different faculty expert to talk about a subject that often is tricky for new teachers. So we've had a variety of subjects. Mr. Cahill, one of our math teachers, did one session which was around how to work with other adults in your classroom. As you know, many of our classrooms have para-educators or co-teachers in it, and sometimes it can be difficult for a brand new teacher who's 23, 24 years old to really tell a para-educator who might be my age what to do in the room. So we really tried to work with them about how they can make it more of a collaborative effort and really take control of that element and resource in their classroom. Mrs. Sullivan also came and did a presentation this past month, which was about classroom management strategies when you have a difficult student in the room. One of the things we see new teachers struggle with a lot is when you have a classroom with 28 kids in it, and you have that one kid who's being difficult, you end up getting all your attention drawn over there. It impacts your lesson, impacts the other students. So Erin was kind enough to come and share some of her expertise around that. So that's what we're doing every month with our new teachers. They seem to have really enjoyed it. We also started up instructional rounds, which was something that was planned pre-COVID here at Torrington High School, but then COVID came, so there were no instructional rounds. Tracy's been kind enough to come over and facilitate our instructional rounds this year. All of our department chairs have been participating. The goal of that is to really empower our staff to become the instructional leaders that they can be in the building. So we've got our department chairs and teachers going into classrooms and seeing what's happening in the classrooms, coming up with their own theory of practice as to how we can impact and change things for our students. We also changed up the faculty meeting format. We no longer do a faculty meeting with all 100 faculty members sitting in seats looking at me. Instead, we break it up. We do three to four rotations. So the staff gets broken into 3 groups or 4 groups of 25 to 30 staff members, and they rotate to different locations. In those different locations, there's a presenter that engages them either in some sort of data review or some professional learning, again, using our own internal expertise. Mary Morton did an outstanding presentation to start the year off around student-led conferences. Mr. Marchand has led the staff in some deep dives into our behavioral data, which has helped people to get a better and clearer picture of what things are happening in our school. And those are just a few of the highlights. One of the other big stations or big impacts we've had from our stations, and John, I think, was fortunate enough to get to meet her today, Angela Lewis, who is our new Apple personnel here in the staff, leads a station usually about every other month in which she spends some time with the teachers, teaching them some tricks that make the MacBooks a little bit more usable and a little bit more or less intimidating, because that was one of the big problems, of course, we faced in the beginning of the year, is we didn't know how to use them quite right. So those are just a couple of the new things that we've been trying out this year. And some more great pictures of our staff, our string quartet, some of our soccer guys, the Beatles versus the Stones. I don't know if any of you got to see our chamber orchestra perform over at the Warner Theater. Was that 2 weeks? Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So that was another highlight of our year. All right, and now I'll turn it over to Lena.
All right, so chronic absenteeism. As you can see over the years, the trend of our absenteeism, the red line that you'll see shows you the projection of where the state has landed in comparison to us. So the bar graph of the blue is DHS over time back to 2019. Obviously, we're trying to get back to that starting point before COVID came and hit us. Really, some positive news from this slide right here is right now we're projecting underneath the state of where the state is coming in for chronic absenteeism. So you can see that yearly chronic absenteeism in the chart to the right side, but I thought just that through line of representing the state with the line really showed kind of where we were heading. We were very, very close to them, teeny bit above them where we ended last year, and we have a pretty good amount of 2% where we're landing right now. So a lot of this really has to stay with our attendance team. We meet monthly. Claire Pepper and her team really take the lead on that, our school counselors. We go through student by student that are hitting those chronic absenteeism levels. And you can see based on those as we go through, there is tons of notes, the outreach, the home visits that have happened, the conversations with families, the understanding and knowledge of medical situations that are happening with students, or homelessness, or if there's some kind of issues that are happening with a family that are impeding them from being able to get to school. Another really great highlight this year is that we started the alternative program here that was started at the middle school the previous year. We were able to make that come to fruition this year. It took us half of the year to get a second teacher. We finally got our STEM piece to that program. So Jill Pouret and Megan Lamonti, they have been working phenomenally with families. Mike Loretti, our social worker, has been layering in on that and just making sure that there's that everyday contact with those students and those families. We have students who were credit gapped that have recovered credit, are coming to school regularly, are going to be able to walk with their class. So really some great celebrations coming out of the ALT program. Obviously, there are some tough decisions that come out of the ALT program that lead families to provide for their children in different ways, whether that's looking at Job Corps, or that's looking at Advance, or it's looking at the GED program. But that is once we can say that we've done everything that we can, and we can support the families to that next step there. Another highlight, our daily attendance for the high school is at 92%. So we fluctuate between 92, 91% daily. So it's really a core group of kids that are causing that chronic absenteeism level, to be that high. Another asset, continuing the LEAP work that we're doing here. Unfortunately, the grant gapped for a little bit. We slid a teeny bit, but we're back getting out there to families. Claudio Passio has made a great impact in the community, especially as we were speaking about our EL families and bridging that gap and stopping that barrier of kind of some fear of how do I enter the school and receive that support for families. So she's gone out a ton with Elena Soleo and a lot of other staff that have continued the LEAP work. So I think that those are all of those impacts that really have brought us to underneath the state level this year. You can go to the next one, John. So this gives you kind of a view by the grade level. So out of that 21.9% that makes up the whole project absenteeism for our building, this breaks it down to what percent of that 21.9% is contributed by each grade. So you can see from 9th to 10th to 11th to our 12th graders, that really, really stood out to me as we were doing that data dives. And, has caused us to have a lot of conversations about what is happening with our seniors, what is making them stop engaging, where are we losing our kids that they are not coming to school. I think that, the 2 years of COVID really did have that great impact. There was a state allowance and flexibility of what seat time looked like and that attendance time. That really has been difficult, I think, for them to realize that the seat time really does matter and it's coming back around to that credit loss. So we've had a lot of guided meetings. Mr. Marchand has a senior class specifically this year, has met with every single student, our school counselors, meetings with families, and really putting that back on our seniors. But another side conversation in terms of seeing this upward trend for our seniors is how do we keep them invested and pushing them forward to that rigorous learning? In conversations that we've started to have in terms about how do we get them out for internships? What other job-related tasks are there where maybe they don't have to come in here and sit for a possibility of 3 study halls in a day? What can we do to keep them motivated and encouraged and engaged in their educational experience? So really need to zone in and really focus on our seniors, our upperclassmen.
This is behavioral data. Right here, you can see the frequency and proportion of referrals. Okay, clearly, grade 12 has the least, grade 11, please start to mature quite a bit. Grade 10 and grade 9 is where we get hit pretty hard, which is typical, actually. This is atypical when you look at it, because last year our grade 9 was over 50% of the referrals. So this year, with the addition of the RBTs, in addition of the social worker, has helped tremendously with the lower level referrals and the frequency of them. Just for at least for the freshman side of it, it's been a little bit more even between the freshmen and the sophomores. So it's spread out a little bit more, this is definitely a different graph than we would normally see. Normally, freshmen would be typically in high school, you would see freshmen have the majority of referrals. Interesting this year. Yep. So here are the behavior improvements that we've seen at THS. So disruptions are down, physical aggression is down, and inappropriate location is down quite a bit. We attribute this to a multitude of things. A lot of it has to do with disruption in the classroom. We don't have the fight with the teachers and the phones anymore. We're going to talk about that later as well. Physical aggression is way down. The disruption and the physical aggression, we attribute that to the RBTs as well. We have 2 fantastic RBTs who do a lot of work with our students. They will talk them down. This is more of a very proactive instead of reactive, which is really what we're looking for. They take them in, they work over strategies along with our social workers. A very tight-knit community. They're always talking to each other, always calling each other, running it by the same students that we have that have the same issues, which helps with the physical aggression part of it. Really, it takes it down a notch and helps to solve it out, and they end up and talk it out a little bit. But doesn't mean they end up coming to us if there's any kind of situation going on. There's still consequences involved, and it goes up that level. But it actually helps with keeping the consequences lower, so they don't get to that point where it's going to be a fight or get to a point that they go to just and confront somebody instead. They go and confront the RBT, let it out there, and then okay, this is how we're going to deal with it. They do a great job.
Mr. Marchand just mentioned cell phones. Amanda, you can take
Yeah, so this is our slide on cell phone use at the high school and our teachers' feelings on the new policies and procedures with cell phones. And I think the fact that the pouches have been a nice visual reminder and contract for our students every morning when they come in has attributed to the data. So the first chart over on the left says count for have you seen a reduction in cell phone use? And 95%, a little over 95% of teachers feel they have seen that reduction of cell phone use. And have you seen an increase in student engagement since the implementation of Yonder? About 80% of teachers have felt that that engagement in their classrooms has increased due to the new policies and procedures at the high school.
And part of that really, we do feel is having the physical pouch. When the students enter through the 2 entrances in the morning, they're asked to take their pouch out and show staff members that they have their pouch and that there's something in the pouch. It's a constant reminder every morning that this is a cell phone free school. That way, teachers don't have to engage in a conversation about, oh, I wasn't using it, it just fell out of my pocket, oh, I forgot to mute it. If we see a cell phone, we take a cell phone, and that's it. There's no conversation, there's no arguments, there's no discussion. Do some of our students seem to have a hard time learning a lesson? Yes, as you guys know, we have hit out of school suspensions with some of those students. But that reminder every morning of your cell phone is not to be seen in this building, I think is a really large part of why we don't see them in the classrooms. The teachers don't have to argue with kids anymore about the cell phones.
I would agree. I mean, I just want to reiterate that point. Pouches are important, especially with this cut and dry situation. You either have it in your pouch or you don't. And there's no back and forth between the students, which makes it, there's still back and forth, but it's very cut and dry. You know, and whether you had it in the pouch or not. And when they call them the parents, it's much easier. It's very clear, very transparent, and it makes that situation go much smoother in the end. And the parents are like, you can keep the phone. You wouldn't believe how many phones, like first phones, we know these are the real ones, that we still have that parents will not pick up. They won't want to pick them up. You know,
And this applies to the smartwatches as well. I think they're on
Yep.
the prohibited list.
And the earbuds.
Yeah, right, there was a long list of things.
they fall under the same category. We sent out a reminder in January before they came back from break, in case everybody got new gifts over Christmas. If you put a watch on and wear it in the school, you are gonna get the violation policy. It's very hard. The watches are harder, I'll say, because you're not used to, it's just like jewelry. You see it, you might not recognize it at first. So that is the harder one. But we take them, yes, that's part of the situation.
All right, back to some highlights. Here is just a partial list of some of the colleges our students have been accepted to, our graduating class for the 2023 graduating class. You can see we have Harvard up there, we have Yale, George Washington University, University of Virginia. We have kids going all across the country. We've got the University of Nebraska up there. So some just really great schools showing, you know, that our kids really do just have amazing possibilities leaving us from Torrington. Now Leanne's going to talk about some of the other student highlights from the year.
So this is just a slide. There's quite a few pictures on there. Aaron went with a few other staff members, brought a group of students and families to Italy, had an amazing experience. I was lucky enough to pop into Maggie McGillicuddy's class one day, and she was content embedding the whole entire trip related to what they were learning about integrated science. And so I got to see and hear a lot firsthand from her of the experience the students had and just how impactful it was. So that's a super highlight of seeing our kids be able to be world travelers. A little boost, I know Joanne was here before, I think she might have stepped out, but last year. Oh,
Right there.
Hey, Joanne, sorry, you were over here. Just really touting that by the seal of biliteracy, first year last year, 21 seniors, 6 languages last year, opened it up this year for seniors and juniors to be able to take that test of biliteracy, feeling that juniors, if they didn't pass it this year, they knew what they needed to work on so that they could receive that seal for next year. So lots of different languages to be able to do that. This year, Joanne had shared with me, they administered 56 tests this year in 8 different languages. So Spanish, French, Italian, Polish, Portuguese, Mandarin, Bengali, Indonesian, and Fulani. So pretty amazing for you know, what the students have and what they can go out with from Torrington High School here. Just a couple other things to brag about our JROTC. They were the runner-up recently at Connecticut's PT competition at Camp Niantic. So that was something we were super proud of them. We're always proud of them when they go out into the community all over the state and represent us. We have 30 plus students that are partnering with Brooker Memorial and are going to the Johnson O'Connor aptitude testing as well. So there's just so many things that our kids are doing. We've got a play coming up this week. student directed and led and produced. So really exciting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, SpongeBob if you want to come to that. But they've had many different productions this year and always make us proud. Pat Conroy did an amazing job really facilitating History Day here. We had a lot of students, which we heard about at the board meeting recently, that placed, and that will go forward to the state competition level. Johanna Hayes came that day. So it was really just an exciting day for the kids. They were excited and proud. So just so many things to be excited and proud about that are happening this year.
So moving forward from this year, just a couple of things that we're really looking forward to bringing into the school. One of them is the pathways. And if you take a look in your folder there, you'll see some drafts of the brochures that we will have for our 8th and 9th graders next year to show them what the pathways are all about. Following that state model, which Amanda and Andrew will talk about in a little bit more, those are the pathways that we have laid out. Within those, there are also opportunities for our seniors to earn professional certificates so that they can go out into careers directly from high school. We have a lot of new and exciting courses, which you'll hear about some more this evening. We're expanding the new teacher workshop, expanding instructional rounds, expanding the classroom lab that we did this year, new capstone opportunities, and improving our ARC program. Last slide. So Josh.
I'll talk about the process for the pathways initially. It's been going on for a long time. In fact, we've worked with the Chamber of Commerce, with the state. We actually had a lot to do with the Perkins 5 transition. We were meeting over in Hartford to talk to superintendents, business, industry about which ones would actually survive in the Perkins grant. They're only focusing really on the growth in Connecticut, which and that Perkins grant will no longer fund certain items. So that was part of the process as well, as far as where the growth, they see the job outlook in Connecticut going. So really focusing on locally, making sure that we're doing the same thing with our pathways. We kind of want to go in that same direction. So we worked with the Chamber of Commerce, other business professionals, the department heads, and the school counselors to come up with what we kind of have now.
Okay, so there are like 7 different pathway brochure drafts that we provided you with. All of those really setting our students up for opportunities post high school at 3 different levels, whether they're going straight to a college major, directly to the workforce, or technical or community college. We've really been looking for opportunities to kind of expand current coursework and programs that we already have, internship opportunities for students, or even ways that we can bring new partnerships and courses, to our school. Some of the, pieces that are under works right now is we're looking to try to have a collaboration with CVS to create a pharmacy technician course where students can receive a certification for that. We have a meeting set up where we're working with Harvard Healthcare and Charlotte Hungerford for a surgical technician and EKG partnership to have students be able to just directly through coursework be able to get a certification in that. I know Andrew, Mr. Marchand, and Ms. Beebe have been working on and have actually a medical internship that's a week long this summer. That's coming up for students to have that opportunity. EMT, first aid, CPR, and AED certification course we're trying to work through right now. Looking at our education pathway and having a para-pro certification for students, that opportunity, and looking into ACE and having a personal trainer certification for students there.
Just to go back to the internship they're actually getting a paid $500 internship through at Charlotte Hungerford. They actually get to get the lab coat, they get a stethoscope, they get a certificate at the end. It's going to be an amazing opportunity. It's based off a model in Waterbury we went down to and saw a whole presentation on it. It was outstanding. I think it's going to be fantastic. We work with the Chamber of Commerce, the Workforce Investment Board is providing helping provide the funding for it. It's going to be a great. It also involves the call center for behavioral health.
So we're really just looking to give students those opportunities, regardless of what they're choosing for a path post-secondary, that they can feel like if they wanted to, they can get a certification right here, right at Torrington High School, and just step immediately into the workforce, or use that as a bridge to that next level of learning or whatever they're really choosing to go, like whatever direction that they're choosing to go. So on the next slide kind of lays out some of that development on this work, and really some of the biggest things we're working on right now is trying to just collaborate with different departments, see how we can expand what we currently can offer, and those brochures currently list courses that we have and are able to run for next year in the different pathways, and looking at, you know, where we can just take that up to like another level for students and really build those partnerships. So hopefully we don't see those, you know, chronic absenteeism numbers by junior, senior year. We're really able to help those kids get out and get those experiences that they really need and are going to keep them engaged and hopefully be way more successful in figuring out like where their passions are and what they want to do in the future as soon as they leave here.
Which is a big part of what the Johnson O'Connor market. I'm not sure if you heard about it, but one of the programs is doing an outstanding job setting up students up there. It's a very intensive career experience. They come away and they can learn from that. The next step and move forward.
That's our presentation. Any questions?
Can I ask that, can we get extra copies of these for the rest of the board?
Sure, we can get that. Yeah.
Yep, we have some.
I don't know how many you got, we have staff right here as well.
Okay, yeah, we'll take them. It'd be good for them to see this.
And I would also ask if we can get this sent out as a PowerPoint to the rest of the board too, so they can call it up.
Yep.
PowerPoint rather than.
Slide.
Yep.
Sure.
We can even link those brochures if they want to see them like a little nicer in color or copy machine.
Yeah, our color.
Perfect
She wrote today, so.
It's a great presentation.
The quality of these presentations have been going up and
Yeah,
up and
great.
up. And Mrs. Ronaldo, you have your work cut out. Got a question?
I had a quick question.
Yep.
The cohort, Andrew mentioned that it was about 120 students. Do we have that large of a transient population? In elementary school, kids jump between school to school a lot, but 120 is like
Right.
about half to 40%.
Depends on the grade level, yes. It's actually, go ahead.
Yeah, so when the SAT looks at growth and they do that matched cohort, they look at students who take the same test in the same season. So like, for example, the SAT was in March, but any kids who missed it, they will take it in April. So kids who take it in April won't be in that matched cohort. So some of it's going to be attributed to the transience of kids in and out, but some of it is the fact that kids didn't take it in that
So
season.
there really aren't that many.
Yeah.
There really aren't that many that take the
Got it. So
Oh,
it's still a good representation. The next question was, what do you guys attribute the STAR testing being so different result-wise from the PSAT benchmark? Because you showed in the STAR testing, the math was 60% meeting benchmark, but we didn't meet the benchmark at all in the PSAT.
Want to take that?
Sure.
Yeah, so,
We
you know,
talked
of
a lot
course,
about.
yeah, and of course, we don't want to see that either, and, you know, in some ways it is perplexing, but they're very different tests without getting too wonky. The STAR test is a norm reference test, so it's looking at how kids do relative to other kids nationally, but it's not, when you talk about percentile rank, meeting proficiency, it's not against a scaled score. It's relative to other kids. And then SAT is different. It's based on a scale, so it's criterion reference. So they're very different tests. They're both really valuable. That's one thing. Another is do you want to talk about the adaptive nature of STAR?
No, I was going to talk more about even just algebra is on the SAT. You may, if you take the adaptive nature of STAR, they may not even get there. So when you get to the algebra part, which is what I was going to talk a little bit more about, we have started this change the way we teach algebra. We use illustrative math. We are switching it up so they take an algebra 1A, 1B, so they can actually make sure we know what they're doing in algebra before we dismiss them from algebra 1. So it's really kind of almost taking sometimes a year and a half, 2 years to get out of algebra 1 to make sure they know it. So we're not going to see the results of this change. This came from the department head making this suggestion a while ago. Finally put it in play based on what they were saying. They're not skills aren't ready. Their skills are not ready coming out of just regular algebra 1 CP. They're jumping into it too quickly. So we have algebra 1A, algebra 1B, and we have algebra 1 still. But it allows them to learn the skills and then get into geometry and be able to be ready to take the SAT. But again, hopefully we'll see that move as we move on in years.
We're doing work at the middle school also, around that so that the high school doesn't inherit that problem every year. So we're taking a hard look at what we're doing around math instruction, 6 through 8.
I think you answered my last question, which the STAR testing, when you said with typical STAR growth, is that amongst our peers in our own district, or is that against the state average? And you said the adaptiveness. If I'm not mistaken, STAR, as you take the test, if a student scores poorly in a section, it drops the difficulty of the question rather than going up. So I can imagine that causes a difficulty in comparison.
STAR is
Exactly.
nationally lower,
Okay,
and
Whereas the SAT, every question.
it's going to be the same across the
Yeah.
board. Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Great presentation.
The SAT is changing completely next year.
There goes that
All-
comparison.
It's gonna be all digital, it's gonna be 52 questions less, it's going to be 2 to 2.5 hours in between that. That's for everybody. That's just the thing.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Comprehensive. And, now we move on to what the English department is doing.
We are following the rule of increasing student engagement, and we're offering new half-year classes and 2 full-year classes. This goes with the presentation that was done previously by Aaron last month or the month before, 2 months ago. We showed a lot of fall courses. This time we have the spring semester. This is working for juniors and seniors going forward in the year 24-25. So not starting next year, but the year after. This gives us a chance to really flesh these courses out and figure out the direction for a better direction. These classes were based on a pool of students and what they thought would be of high interest to them for taking an English class. And the courses that we've come up with are based on those results.
Would you like to talk about any in particular, or just wait for us to? ask
I'm ready
questions?
for whatever you want.
Questions?
The Contemporary Literature American Voices is a junior year course, and the senior year course is a International Voices. Those are for more below reading level at junior and senior, so we can bring them up. And we figured that the amount of independent work, independent reading choices would be of higher interest to them, so that will make them come to school and actually look at what they want to look at. Obviously with our guidance, not just go and do whatever they want willy-nilly, but they will have our guidance. The other courses are half-year courses, and they kind of complement the spring courses complement the previous ones that Aaron presented earlier. Ask away.
No,
I think the reading list pretty much says it all. Gives you an idea of what could happen in those classes. Right hands.
They absolutely maintain the same rigor that we have been very proud of in our English department. Classics mixed with some newer texts, newer maybe 1974, but and what we've tried to do with some of these courses is to overlap books so as to decrease the costs of buying new books. We think we can do it right now, not offering every class every time, but we could probably offer the choices as well as maintain our regular Northwestern approved classes that are for seniors at this point. And our AP and new classes.
yeah, exactly. And I just one quick thing too. Just completely, we spent a lot of time kind of speaking to another point, in curriculum writing, aligning what we already have in our curriculum with these new classes to make sure that our skills are still connecting. We're covering all of the same standards that we have been covering within the new classes.
Just, I want to thank you. A lot goes into putting all this together. I know firsthand you don't have to do it. It's greatly appreciated. Sometimes some of these things are going to be, as you know, what gets somebody into school, and the more we can get them out of study halls and into something that's going to interest them, better success we're going to have. So thank you for all your time on these.
And then next Monday, we're gonna be with curriculum council to hear more about the vision of the English
Is
department.
that next Monday?
Is it next Monday?
The 8th, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll put it in my calendar.
I'm sure I
Check it
emailed
out. Now
you.
you're sure.
No excuses now. We all have to be there.
I'm here regardless.
No questions? Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing these classes go in and kids learn from.
Exciting things for the students. I think it's great.
Okay. Move on to social promotion. I got no questions whatsoever left over from last.
Just, are we moving the course proposals to the full board?
Yes, we are. Reason not.
No, it just wasn't.
Okay,
stated to
now,
make sure it
social,
doesn't die
so your
here.
question wasn't about social.
No,
promotion,
no.
about procedure.
Yeah, procedure.
So I guess we're done with that, at least for the time being.
Guys have one question, sorry, I didn't submit it. in
Please.
advance. So I guess what I'm trying to grapple with on the social promotion is when we look at all of our test scores, right, and we see proficiency ratings. You know, we're making improvements, but we're still lower, right? So how, what I always try to understand is if only, just say 43% of the kids are proficient, how do 99% get more? That's just something that I'm always trying to weigh out in my head, understanding that they may not be proficient in reading, right? Maybe they don't math, but at what point do we look at, you know, the overall? I know it's a complicated question and it's different for every student, but it's really hard to understand that if we're 43% proficient, how do we move 99% of the kids? And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, and I don't have to be the only one responding. I think one thing that we have to remember is that we're talking about one moment in time on those assessments. That's a snapshot of a student's life and a day in the life of, a moment in the life of it. The day they take that test, and I don't want it to sound like I'm making excuses, but oftentimes their performance, and some of the high school folks can chime in, their performance over time, day to day in class, does not look like what their performance on these assessments show. Is that correct? So I guess when you're framing it through the lens of social promotion, if a student is performing on grade level and, you know, completing coursework and attending and passing, then that's another way to measure their achievement. So, you know, we don't advance or retain students based on a standardized measure. We do it based on their performance in school, in class. Right? That's still the case. Yes.
So how would the process work? So the teacher would originally make the recommendation if she thought someone should be retained.
It
to the
can be a
principal.
teacher, often it's a teacher, sometimes a parent will make the recommendation or will raise a concern. That typically happens more at the elementary level, coming from a parent, than up at the secondary level. Right, at the high school, it's
easier,
very
yeah.
cut and dry. They either have the credit or they don't, right?
Yeah, now I'm more talking about elementary.
Yeah. At the elementary level, it all comes up during SST, right? Student success team meetings that have been going all year. It's never a surprise at the end of the year or getting close to the end of the year. Gee, you know, Susie's been struggling. We'll look at that lights retention scale that we talked about last time. What's contributing? What's been tried? What are all the strategies that have been put in place? What are the interventions that have been tried? You know, we are held accountable by the state to exhaust that list first. You know, we're told that retention is always a last resort. You know, of late, I mean, we've put in all kinds of interventions, summer school, extended day, the interventionists that we have, the coaching, that, you know, all of these things that are contributing to student success. But yes, there is still an opportunity and a forum for those conversations to happen. And I will say, and Kathy can attest to this, I mean, every year, there's a conversation
Absolutely.
about one or two students, especially at the lower level. You know, and we talked last time about age at that level too, at the start age of a child. That actually came up in a meeting that I was at today with the State Department. You know, districts across the, you know, the state are raising that same concern with respect to chronic absence, really, that, you know, families don't often feel that kindergarten attendance is critical. So we're trying to shift that mindset because that's a huge part of the problem.
So without showing my age, so we used to have a transitional first grade.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that would make sense to again, look at that to kind of net some of those kids because that snowball just grows and grows.
That was
We
a
did
touring
that at
form.
Torrington.
Yeah,
We
it
did
worked
that,
really well.
and it was pretty much our, as we refer to them, our burr babies.
Right.
September, October,
Yeah.
November, December. It was taught by, you know, a teacher who was interested in really bridging the gap between kindergarten and first grade. We had a smaller class size. She happens to be sitting here, actually. And our hope was that by having the smaller class size, we did push in some more supports, because remember back then, we didn't have
Right.
all of the supports that we currently have in place. And we would hope to move those 10 kids a year and a half growth so that they could then go to second grade with their, we did between kindergarten first one year and one year.
Kindergarten and first, and if they met the benchmarks for the end of kindergarten, they could move on to first, and they could move on with their peers. And if they didn't, then they would stay, you know, for that additional year. And it was a combination of kindergarten, first grade curriculum, so that they could move on to second grade when they were done, and 98% of them did.
Yeah.
Because of that smaller class size and those intensive, that focus on what their needs were, and those intensive supports and how to move them forward.
That was just something that we did as a school. We talked about, and we were given the opportunity to actually use our staff that year in the way that we felt would be the best. And it just so happened that the kindergarten team at that point thought that it would be in their best interest to have those younger, you know, because like we talked about last week, some of our kindergarten students were 4 and some were 6, yeah, and that's a huge gap. So it really, it was very effective, it worked very well. But then, you know, numbers started to go when it was go higher, you know, increase. And we had to, it didn't happen at East, right? We just did it at Torrington.
Right.
I think Forks did it as well.
I think, I believe it or not, I mean, some of these things are based on very practical issues like space. You
Right,
know, we didn't
exactly.
have
Now,
space to do
Right.
something like that. So, and I think
Right.
that might have been part of the reason why Torrington had to disband it because we ran out of
And
room.
went to full day kindergarten.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
That's
That's
right.
We
right.
transitioned that K1 transition class, which I taught for about, I think, believe, if my old memory is serving me correct. But then we transitioned to full day kindergarten.
That's
So
right.
that, the first year we had full day kindergarten was the last year that we had the K1 transition class, and then everybody was full day K. So we didn't really need to have that at that point because we offered full day K to everybody.
Right.
When did we make those decisions?
About retention.
Right.
Now, like late May.
Okay, so maybe it'd be worthwhile just to get a number at the next meeting, at the next SIC meeting. Just so we know if there are a lot of kids we're talking about or only a few kids.
It's usually.
Just the number of kids that are being
Considered for it.
that are being considered for, and then which way the decision falls.
Sure, we can do that. Sometimes, well, often, now that we have summer programming, often those decisions are deferred until the beginning of August. Sometimes families will say, look, my child is going to this intensive summer programming. If there's sort of consternation around the idea that, you know, the administration at the school will often say to the family, yes, let's see what happens at the end of, you know,
Like
end
bring
of
that
July
in.
or whatever. Yeah, we'll revisit.
We can hear a status report.
Mhm.
Your pending.
Are the parents still allowed to override the school district, or is that no longer?
No, no, by statute, it's really the decision of the district, of the school. With a caveat in that language that
Confusing.
well, it's, yes, but the caveat is really to do everything within the district's power to make it a collaborative decision, because there's so much, I don't know, discord around the whole notion.
It's much better if everybody's on the same page, you know, but they're not, you know, I mean, honestly, I think in my entire career, maybe recommended it 3 times, you know, and in all 3 cases, it was well received by the parents, not necessarily at the first conversation, but all 3 of those students went on to do really great things, and it was the best thing that happened for them, that extra year to learn, because they were young. I mean, I think there were larger numbers that we recommended it for, but those 3 students, I know one went on to become president of her class or senior year. I don't know, you may even know her. And so it was great. And my goddaughter was retained in kindergarten as well, because she was 4 and she just wanted to play. She was a bird baby and she just wanted to play dress up. She didn't care a thing about letters or numbers. You know, so I think everybody puts in the best effort always to make the best decision looking down the road. You know?
Okay, Jeff, you're getting the last question,
the
then we're
last
going.
It's fast, Mr. Deacon, since the numbers got at the table here. Remember, we had, it was like 87 students that were retained in your report 2 weeks ago. It was an absurd percentage of those students who left the district, do you remember?
Most of them.
It was like 85%, just color, and we weren't here for that meeting. It was very strange that when the district retained a student, the odds were, but the majority of them left within a very short period of time. Was that an accurate?
That's accurate, yeah. It maybe was not necessarily that particular year, but at some point after being retained, they did leave Torrington. Very interesting. I don't know why
Yeah.
they've decided so many have left, but that's just what we found. So it would be interesting to contact those families, you know, and not that we can, but it would be interesting to have that anecdote behind, you know, was it because of retention? Was it because of another reason?
To help cater the response to it. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. System-wide focus areas, anything to say there? Nothing to say there. Tag update, student services report,
Still waiting on what's gonna happen with our budget.
all quiet on the western front.
Yep.
Okay, Alliance updates.
So Sue Lebonsky and I actually went to Hartford yesterday. We spent a couple hours at the State Department with representatives from the other Alliance districts from across the state. We met with the Chief Academic Officer, our Alliance liaisons. We discussed the year in review, what we thought went well, what we'd like to change, what we'd like more of from the state in terms of support, resources. It was interesting because every district in the room said, we want more money. So it was a really productive session. We talked a little bit about next year going forward. Our Alliance reps will be here later this month to do some walkthroughs of the building. They were very complimentary. I think Sue and I both felt really good about what we were able to share that's been done in Torrington. It was a good day.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to add anything to the already long list of topics for future meetings? We know we're going to hear middle school report. Anything else we know we're going to hear from the church? We're going to get possible social promotion.
You want numbers? Yep.
Just whatever number you have at the moment, all subject to change.
And the process for determining the parent, the teacher teacher of the year by school and district wide, because a lot of people have been inquiring about it.
Determine. TOY 801. Okay. Anything else? Comments for the good of the order, Marissa.
Very good meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Great presentation. That was very informative. Thank you for all your effort.
Thank you for all the time you put into that. It was really wonderful. It's great to hear all the good news and just celebrate teachers.
No, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for all your hard work.
Great, fantastic presentation, and thank Mary and Aaron too, because their courses sound amazing.
Ditto.
Let the
Deacon,
pathways
that's your-
fire.
That was your comment, okay, and we're to Joanne, who is here. We-
Yes, I am here. For the record, I am here. And Raider Pride, nicely done.
And I will just reiterate, thank you very much for great report. Got a lot out of it. Thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, approval of the agenda,
So moved. Second.
Kathy then John. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes,
Second.
John and Kathy. All in favor? Public participation, is there any?
No, there's not.
We will skip. Discussion next steps, facilities use, policy 1011.
Can I just say at the outset, I just wanted, this is gonna be a little unconventional, but for the record, I just want to thank Kim and John and Marissa, in particular for Marissa, for putting up with, this was a really confusing conversation at Vision around this policy, and I don't know, if we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I'm just applauding Marissa for keeping track of all the string of emails with, you know, a million different attachments, and then the, no, it's not that one, wait, you know. So anyway, thank you. So at the last meeting, when we talked about, when we last left this conversation, it was, the request was, or the decision was to take another look, to add some tiered language, to look at some hourly rates, to make sure that the benefits were baked into the fee schedule. So all of that has been done. I think since last meeting and prior to tonight, there was also some concern or some conversation about some of the language in the policy on page 9 about the game of chance, right? So we did find, you have a handout, there's actually legislative language about bingo, which I found to be really kind of comical. Only in Connecticut can there be a statute about bingo. So you have that, and then the second sheet along with that, you have the whole thing. So all the legislative requirements are in this little summary page. But then when we as a team met and talked about it, what you see on this sheet with this is just our suggestion, just as a place to start the conversation, maybe how to address that issue.
I think that covers it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so too.
without getting too wordy, right? Yeah.
And that would be under,
So we would put it under, we would list the PA 17-231 under the legal references. But then on page 9 of 18, so in the policy itself, under actual usage restrictions, it's letter D, use of school buildings for games of chance for profit are not permitted. So just add that highlighted language to that bullet.
functioning, yeah.
Right, so that was easy.
Sure. Not about this, I think is perfect, but something that's come up this week that I'm not sure if we should clarify a sentence in here or not. So if an outside group is renting the facility after school, just say, right? So they would be limited to the area that they're renting and the public restrooms, right? They wouldn't be allowed, just say like bus area or parts of the building.
Typically, they're not permitted to.
Right,
But
do you
they're-
think that
they're
needs
right
to
in
be
that
here
area.
that's saying like access to restricted areas would revoke use of the facility or something to that nature? And I'm not trying to filibuster this, it's just, this just came to my attention. So I'm just wondering, since we're working on it, should we protect ourselves to make it easier for John or a principal in a building to say, hey, you're not allowed in this area? Just a one liner, right?
On the,
Is it on the form?
on the form, if you look at page 15 of 18, where it says facilities use rules and regulations number 4, I spelled it out in there.
Limits use of facilities to only the spaces requested along with the adjacent bathroom.
That's Jen. So hopefully we can, when this passes, we can just point that out to principals as a.
Right, or do we want it stated in the policy also? So it's in 2 places. So under rules and regulations, A, all requests, just add a sentence there. That- even what number 4 says. So then they see it in 2 places.
Yeah, that's fine.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think so, because if you read number 7 on the form, it basically says this is a brief summary of the Torrington Board of Education's policy. Applicants should become familiar with the policy, blah, blah, blah. So if I have that on the form, maybe it should be worded in the policy as well.
Right, number 4, do you think that that should go under actual usage restrictions where the game of chance is?
It should be under rules and regulations. Because that's a regulation of them to ask to use the facility.
But it's usage.
I think we go right with A.
Right, with A under rules and regulations.
Under actual use restrictions.
Because we're restricting, we're limiting
Oh,
their
true,
use.
true,
Right.
The
So
use of the
what
school
page is that?
facility
Page 9 of 18.
does not include school equipment or areas that are not.
Right.
It's the section where the piano's talking about, right?
10A.
Yes.
Where you can't
Right,
move those.
under actual.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So right under A,
Right, with A.
With A.
oh, part of A?
Part of A, just the next
Yeah, that's
sentence.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah, and then I guess the question is, do we need to put something about accessing a restricted area? You could revoke your privilege to use the building or something, because.
There is language in here that does say that if you are, that if you violate any of the policy or anything, that you could lose your privileges to rent the building. So there's language. in
Page-
there.
Page 5.
Yep.
Page 5
That's right.
also. Right before legal references?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? I have one other thing. Yes, Brian.
I very seldom bring things up, but I'm looking at 4, and it says evening events are automatically canceled when schools are closed due to inclement weather. Should we maybe say anytime school is closed, all of these things are canceled? I'm thinking the after-school programs, for instance.
Just leave it events, not evening events.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Sometimes.
Yeah, all events are closed.
Sometimes that doesn't happen, John. I'm trying to think. There are times when the BASES program right? There are some times when I have to go back and look at what they're, every year we get something from Ed Advance about how they make the determination. And I don't remember exactly. I know what you're saying.
We can leave it like this. It's not a big deal. I'm just thinking, I don't want anyone to try to hold us to keeping the building open because their after-school program is after school instead of evening.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You do after school.
After school.
Unless
Number 4 on the application form, page 15 of 18. So do you want it to say after-school events instead of evening events?
Well, I do, but Sue thinks there might be a problem with bases.
No, I'm just thinking, it depends on the reason for the closure. Joanne, do you remember? You didn't have bases.
But I feel like occasionally there are
Occasionally they stay.
some kind of exception.
Yeah.
Could you put?
But this is different.
But that's just.
But this is a one-timer, right? Like, so. Right, so are you thinking that if we end up closing school for a weather event or whatever, that takes precedence over? We don't have to keep our building open for an
That's
outside
what I'm thinking,
organization.
Right.
Yeah,
It's too dangerous for our kids to be in the building. It's
Right.
too dangerous for anyone else to be.
right.
Typically, that's what we would do if we shut down the event for our children traveling in on buses, right? We would also shut down in the evenings for sporting events, all that stuff. That's usually what happens.
So couldn't you just put after-school activities unless consent is provided by the superintendent or designee?
Yeah, right. So in the event
That
that,
they needed to run after school.
right, so in the event that school is closed, right,
Due to inclement weather, it just says.
right,
You could just say even simply, a written permission is required for an exception to this policy. So this, you could make it simpler rather than state it out. You could just say a written exception is required. Something along those lines.
required from the
From the
superintendent
superintendent
or
for an exception.
designate,
or des-
right, yeah.
That way you don't have to lock yourself into
Yep.
what your example.
So all we could do is we could just add to it and just say, unless written permission is, or unless permission is approved by the superintendent. Yeah. I can add something. I'll run into my thesaurus.
So unless written permission is
granted
by the superintendent.
/ designate, right.
I just said one other thing, I'm sorry. On page 3, fees and other costs, section 2. Page 3, I'm sorry, 8 of 18 of the package,
Okay, yeah.
section 2. I thought at the last meeting when we were defining 10% or more of Torrington Public Schools, they were talking about for the school year. So that if like an after-school program was running, they would have to serve 10% of the kids for the school year, right? Because on a certain day, they may not. I thought that was a discussion.
We should cover that. We did say that.
So say that again.
Just for the school year, the 10%. The service is 10% or more of the Torrington Public School students during that school year.
Sure, if you had a small after-school program that ran 7 sessions, back to back to back, they only had 15 students per session.
Oh, I see.
They wouldn't meet the limit or the requirement for.
But for the school year, they would service. that
Okay, so or more, so 10% or more of Torrington Public School students for
During that school year.
during that given school year or something. All right.
All right, I'm ready. I'm gonna ask, it's page 13. I don't have to ask the question.
I didn't get there yet either. But I have something. Go ahead.
13, the contracted hours for the custodian. You mentioned it, Sue, about the benefits. The rate hasn't changed. It's still the same as from the 19th.
because it
Right,
was already
because it
included.
was already, we did the math and
Oh, okay.
found that the rates that we sent forward last time
Okay.
more than covered what
Oh,
you would
okay.
serve.
Thank you.
Right, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we looked at every custodian that we have right now, did their average rate. The time and a half rate would be at 8.6% markup, and the double time rate would be an 8%
Oh,
markup.
perfect. Oh, thank you, guys.
Perfect. So my
So excited.
2 cents. I don't think it should say contract rate. I think it should say custodial fees and include the 30 minutes before and 1 hour after,
Yeah.
all under custodial fees.
I agree.
Because their contract isn't $46 an hour. Look at the custodial contract, that's not their hourly rate, right? So it's custodial fees for the use of the facility. So the fees are 3-hour minimum. They're, and, plus 30 minutes before and an hour after, right? And then the rates.
So you want to make it custodial fees and just merge where it says custodial fees into that, under that heading.
Correct.
Got it.
So where it says 3-hour minimum, then put in parentheses, 30 minutes before and 1 hour after scheduled event time will be applied.
Okay.
And then
So plus 30 minutes before and an hour after, right?
Got it.
So it's really 4.5 hours. Or does it, or does the 3 hours
No,
include?
3-hour minimum includes the 30 before. It's the minimum.
Okay, so
That's
that
the minimum.
includes the hour and a half.
Right, that's the minimum.
Okay,
But
so if someone needs the space for an hour, then they would have the 30 minutes before and the 1 hour after, which is less than the 3-hour minimum. It would still be a 3-hour minimum.
right.
correct.
All right, so in parentheses, then this includes the 30 minutes before and an hour after for.
Yeah, but I think
Okay,
it,
I can fix that.
I mean, it still has merit the way it is, like the way you spelled it out, because if somebody rents it for 5 hours, the bill is really 6.5.
We
Correct.
can look up.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay, now, the other rates, I'm sure that you,
So, so what I did in the hourly rates, because that was something that was discussed, right? Is that I, looking at the daily rate as a minimum of 3 hours. Okay? So you know, the daily rate here is, if you do it a daily, it's a minimum of 3. If you're gonna do it, I don't know, I think the hourly rate gets a little bit crazy because the daily rate is, it includes that minimum, right? So I don't know why we would need an hourly rate on this stuff, but I broke it out for you as requested.
well, it's, go ahead.
We ever rent the library out for a day? I'm confused by the daily versus. the
It's,
hourly.
daily means that if you rent the library, let's say you're gonna have an event here that's an hour long, it's a 3-hour minimum, that's the daily rate. So if you're gonna have an event here that's 6 hours long, it's the daily rate.
I get it.
For just the facility,
Correct.
plus the, right. okay,
Right, plus,
gotcha.
right, above and beyond that is your hourly custodial fee, your utility fee or whatnot, but just to rent the space for whatever the time frame is that you're renting the space, that's the daily rate.
I get it.
That's the way we've always done it. It's never been broken into hourly and going with that 3-hour minimum, it's the daily rate. So that's why I gave you the hourly breakdown to it, and I kept the hourly rate obviously higher than the daily rate, which would make people really want to use the daily rate because they're getting a deal on the daily rate. But I don't even think that we really need to have the hourly rate in here. We've never done it that way before. It's always been, this is the one-time rental fee for a space.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
And
right.
done.
Because we never had that.
I think it might confuse
Yeah, I do too. That's,
Yeah, so just have it, the rate.
The only exception I would ask that we make to this is that the turf field lights, which cost a fortune to run, it does a typo, it should be $300 for the daily rate. But that is an hourly cost that we incur, and it is a small fortune to run the lights. The turf field, so turf field lights under Torrington High School, it says daily 100, hourly 110. But I know that everybody has said the turf field lights cost like $100 an hour to run.
Do they?
That's what we,
I,
so that's what we're told we
that probably wouldn't, I could probably see that. I could see that expense at that cost for running for turf lights for that. The full-blown turf lights for an hour could cost $100, yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So if somebody wants the turf field at night, they're gonna pay $375 for the field and another $300 for the light.
I would just, the light fee should just be
An hourly
an
rate.
hourly rate, because you
Oh, I
probably
see.
only need the lights for an hour.
Got it.
Or maybe 2 if it's a late
Oh,
night game,
okay.
but it's just
So-
one of those few things that if we got rid of the hourly column entirely, which I don't
Just
have a
right
problem
per
with,
hour.
there should just be a turf lights hourly.
Per hour.
Per
Right,
hour.
right.
Per hour.
Okay.
Sound good?
I don't think John would know, is there anything else that runs that type of a cost to the district that would need to be measured by the hour? I'm not aware of one, but
You
No.
want
you
it
would know.
300 an hour?
No, $100 an
Oh,
hour. It could be 100, even if whatever John thinks, 100, 110, but there is an actual large expense to the district to run the lights on the turf field.
So these fees are based on a 3-hour minimum?
Yes. So anything above and beyond that is you're gonna pay the minimum rate for 3 hours. So that so if you're coming in for 3 hours, if you're coming in for an hour, you're gonna pay the minimum of 3-hour rate. If you're coming in for 6 hours, you're gonna pay that same rate. But the difference in the 6 hours is you're gonna pay the hourly rate for custodians and the hourly rate for utilities.
Okay, gotcha.
Just toss the hourly rate. myself.
Yeah, toss hourly, toss
Yeah,
where it says
yeah, so I
Just
Xed
do
it out
rate.
already and I added the lights per hour.
Turf lights on.
What is the rate? Do you want to keep daily? Do you want to keep daily as a rate?
I think we need a different word than daily.
Right.
Rental,
Rental?
rental
I-
fee or.
But daily to me means
Just rate
rent it all day.
Event fee.
Yeah, event fee or.
So this is that was the way it was always spelled out in the original one, so
It said
if you, yeah, it said daily, so if you want to change it to a different word,
Kim just made a good
Yeah.
point, though. If
What?
somebody wants it for like Saturday
3-day
and
weekend,
Sunday.
they could rent it once for the 3 days consecutively and say, it didn't say that it was per day. Because I'm renting it for one event that I'm having, it's a 3-day event,
Could you put rate per day?
well, that's what daily means, so that's why I thought.
Mhm.
daily made sense.
that's probably why it was originally put daily.
And maybe I'm just confused because we added hourly and that was never there before.
Well, the hourly was never there, that was
Right.
added in at the request.
At the request of the last
Right.
I'm the
committee
same
meeting.
way.
I actually, I think
Blocks,
Kim, I think Kim
that-
makes a good
I
point.
think the
'Cause
request was for blocks of time, because somebody said if somebody rented it for a full day on the weekend, is it the same cost as just renting it for a couple hours at night on a weekday? And so the request at the last committee meeting was to come up with possibly 2 columns for blocks of time, whether it was a full day, half day, or whatever, and John just came back with an hour.
No, I appreciate that, but it's.
Yeah. So these are proposed fees. Can it say?
See, and looking at all of the other districts that I looked at, nobody, there was one district that had an hourly setup on their fees.
Yeah, I'm not talking hourly, I'm talking daily, just. for-
No, just in my explanation, there was one district that had an hourly setup fee. Everybody else did not have a changing fee schedule based on a 3-hour rental versus it was, here's the fee, that's what the rental is
Per day.
per day.
So can you write like daily schedule?
Per day.
Fee per day.
Could you change the 3-hour minimum to X hour maximum? or something along those lines. Because if you had, say, a group wanted to rent the gym to do sleepover, like Boy Scouts rent for sleepover, something like that. They team in at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and then leave at 8 o'clock on the morning. Is that 2 days? Is that one of that?
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I don't know, just for me, I think that daily kind of says it right there. It just says that that's your daily rate. And then, you know, Mark's point, I mean, obviously that is, that could be up to the discretion of the superintendent about how that gets charged for a group that maybe did that and they left at 8 o'clock in the morning. Rather than getting deep into trying to write every single thing, every scenario into this policy, because then we could make the policy like 800 pages long and still miss something.
Just leave it. That's the way it's
Leave it
been.
as daily.
We know what it means. We can
That's
explain
right,
what it means to
Sam. I
people
know.
when they come in.
And we have the right to refuse any rental for whatever reason, so
Right, right.
Okay.
I'm sure that's in here
I
somewhere.
don't know. do we?
What, is that in there somewhere?
Well,
They
we're not
violate it.
discriminating.
We're watching you.
Right. Anything else? So,
Thank you, guys. This is
yeah.
a lot of work. Long overdue.
Just so you guys know, because it printed this way, but the form is actually front and back. So 14 and 15, that would be front and back of the form. So the front side, it, you know, has the office use section, it has their section that they fill out with the request. The back side of the form, which never was on our form before, has some of the basic points in the policy that we really want to make clear on some of the things that they need to adhere to. Plus, if they're adding extra dates, there's some columns so they can add extra dates.
I just saw.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we always required 4 weeks prior to the event? Has that always been?
We have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't remember those now. Okay.
It never happens
I
that
was gonna
way.
say.
I always sign one. I always get one run into my office going,
Uh-huh.
they're coming in tomorrow, you gotta sign it,
Right,
so.
okay. I just wanted to make sure, do we even need that in there then?
It's good to set the standard.
Right.
So my question is, for building use, it says the signature of the building administrator, athletic director, and facilities, and who's the authorized signature on page 15? That would be the superintendent or designee.
No, that is you, that is the person who's renting.
So where does the superintendent approve?
Superintendents never approve these.
That doesn't come to us, but so building level.
It's
It's
always
basically just
been
to check if the
approved.
So
space is
you're the
available.
final
It's,
approver.
I have, my position has been the final approver.
Where does it
It's
say
always,
that, though?
it's always been,
Here, building administrator, director of facilities.
Oh, director of facilities, okay.
yeah. So it's always been the building administrator looks at, you know, they have their administrative assistant look at their calendar. Okay, the date's open, yes, it's available, he signs off on it. If it's something that's applicable to the athletic director, you know, oh, sorry, no, you can't rent the gym that day, I've got a school event, he will not sign off on it. It then goes back to the process of them trying to refigure out a date. Once they get all the approvals, it comes down to central office. My position always looked at it for custodial use, custodial scheduling, that kind of stuff. And then I approved it. And then at that point, copies, my administrative assistant and shared administrative assistant would make copies and then send it back to the original requester. And at this point, they've signed off on the bottom with the language at the end that says that they are taking responsibility for all the policies that adhere to this, and that they're taking responsibility for anything that happens to our facility.
So do they get a copy of the policy?
They don't get a copy of the policy, they get this form back signed,
Citing the policy number to. go
citing the
look at?
policy
Okay.
number.
That I see, now. Okay.
And it does say on there, number 7, that the policy is viewed on the district's website. So it refers to where they can see the policy to view it all.
Right,
But to hand them that much
I
paper,
know,
nobody's
I know.
gonna, sadly, all the work we did, nobody's gonna sit there and read this whole thing.
Well, there might
But
be one or
but it
two
needs to
though,
be
but-
pointed to, you know what, here's the policy, you should be familiar with it.
Right, so then a copy will go to the,
It goes back to the school
originator
and back to
the
the
schools.
original.
Okay, so,
And one is kept at central office.
so one's kept at central office, one goes to the entity that's wants to use the
renting it.
facility. And then one goes to the building administrator. Does one go to the maintenance people that are in that building?
Yes.
So that they know what's going
Yeah,
on?
so when it
too?
comes back to the building and it goes on their calendar, what they do is they actually send it right to the head custodian.
Okay,
At which time they have a set of criteria that they schedule overtime on. Because overtime has to fairly be distributed amongst them, so they have a set of criteria that they do that.
The only, I forgot one other thing, we should do a cross-reference of the second page of the application back to the policy, because the number 2 in the facility use rules and regulations on the application still reflects the 75 hours, or 75 occupants.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, what did we change that to?
It's correct in the policy, 150, and there's an
Okay.
exemption there based on, there's a whole paragraph, you could just forklift and drop it.
Thank you.
Nice catch.
Every so often I get lucky.
You get lucky?
Every so often I see these things, I catch a lucky.
Can I just ask one question? So, in looking at this form, we don't have the superintendent approve anything, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but yet, under the public use of school facilities, where it says
What page?
application submitted to superintendent of schools,
what page?
6 of 18.
Maybe it should say or designate.
Designate.
Yeah. So we just need to add or designate.
Okay.
Where are you?
Or should it just say
The
to the
bottom
director
of
of
6 of
facilities,
18.
'cause that's where it's always went.
Right.
And I'm wondering, what would be another location?
Director of
Director of
facilities, I would
facilities.
say, because you guys are the ones that are making sure they have insurance and.
Right, we, what they
Sure, we all
requested
know.
for equipment, all that stuff, right, so.
So she, director of facilities.
Permission will be granted by the director of facilities consistent with. Is that what you're looking at
Well, here,
on page 6?
applications submitted to.
Right.
Kill the
Oh,
super-
yeah.
How about anywhere where it says superintendent? Just change it.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just put everything back to their
Please.
appropriate
It's
departments.
same on 7 of 18. It's there too.
Yeah, we'll have to just go through it.
Yeah, it goes through.
Find it, replace.
Right, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, do we want it to come back here or?
I think you gotta get it. So that people can start, know what it is for next year.
Okay, so if you make those changes,
This is
please.
John's no more.
And,
It's my swan song.
Yeah.
okay,
Hide your initials in the T at the top, John.
Give yourself a pen next time.
Where's Waldo?
yes, yes. Okay. Okay, next.
Next is a shipment policy that since Kim and I looked at so over the last couple of months, this is a policy that Shipman added that was not there when we were in that particular series.
Yeah, so they actually added it last year, but in the last few months, we've gone back and double checked and kind of done a new crosswalk. And this was, we have already finished the 5,000 series, and this is a policy that's been added since we did the first crosswalk. So we're going back just to make sure we didn't miss anything. And so that's brought this just, that'll button us up with 5,000 series as of last month.
Okay, so Do we have an adult? We have adult ed, right?
It's maintained by.
It's not maintained by us.
So we don't need what's in yellow. Or do we?
Don't maintain it. Right, it's not our
Right.
program, it's an outside entity. that
Okay,
runs
so
it.
that's
So-
in yellow, we don't.
And I mean, we're doing this, you know, the workaround FAFSA completion, and it's very rigorous and ambitious, it's just, right,
Yeah.
we just don't have a
We gotta
policy
work
around it. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, in favor to bring to the full board?
Yes.
Topics for future meetings.
Crosswalk. Wellness is gonna come up sooner than later. We have a district wellness committee meeting on the 16th. Becky Tyrell from Ed Advance will attend that meeting. And will bring with her some recommendations for revisions to our current wellness policy that are based on feedback from the federal government as part of the audit that we, or the review that we went through last year. So wellness policy will come forward pretty soon, in June, probably in June, yeah.
Okay. Comments for the good of the order, Laura?
No.
My last policy meeting.
You
With my swan
You
song.
went out with a bang, let me tell you.
No, thank you.
Good meeting.
I want to recognize the policy chair for the first time I've been on the board, is running a shorter meeting than the school group.
Wow.
Wow. I just-
Very seldom happens, so it's good that you're
That's all
recognized.
I have. I wish you
Yes.
a good meeting.
Marissa? I want to thank you for all the work put into this. And thank you for your past.
Nice job, guys.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
John and Kathy, 7:56. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're done.
I had to give you that one.
Yeah, thank you.
I had to.
You know?
John,